And I want to look into the reporting because that's also a very powerful feature of the IPEX, and I want to take you through an example of how you could develop such a report step by step into a form that you can kind of take it into a board meeting, run it every week on your projects, and then it will be in a form where it's immediately presentable. So the reporting engine Eli already mentioned, it's tightly integrated into the IPEX and allows you to access basically everything. And we have a couple of output formats. The most prominent ones are CSV, which is great to exchange table of numbers, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoints, PDF, or HTML. And we also have a couple of input models that allow you to access the image database, the web disk, the study planner, or CSV file that you can read in. And today I want to look at, in particular, the Excel output, which is pretty advanced, as well as the PowerPoint module. That's a more recent development, but it could be very interesting for you to get you started on things with reporting, because PowerPoints are just so nice to have images and movies in them and still be able to manipulate them. And for the Excel example, I will use the image database, and for PowerPoint, the web disk as input modules. So we have a small script language in there, and Eli mentioned these canned reports that are kind of prepared scripts of this kind, and you can open them from your project page and run them. But I want to go, bare metal here and write our script ourselves. And you always start with a mode that just defines the output file. And then this XLSX that you see here, so that's the mode. The XLSX you see here is the output module. And because I'm a lazy typer, I always like to use a shortcut and just define X. And then I can use that throughout the example. Otherwise, and you don't really see the highlighting here, right? So then you have to look at the right side. So then we define a new worksheet and give it a name. In Excel spreadsheets, you can have any number of worksheets. And then the model that we're using here is row-based. So we write one row at a time in your spreadsheet, and the end is just an add function that closes our line after the last element. So this basically defines two column headers with name and path. And then I mentioned the input module. In this case, I'm asking for a list of all our projects, and then add the project name and the project path to it. From this model project list all, I get a list of all the projects as objects in the P variable, and then I can call P project name or P project path to get the respective values. And then we have the end of the loop, and finally I just output the spreadsheet. In theory, you could use the reporting engine to output multiple spreadsheets, but we will concentrate on the simple example. If you then upload the file, or you have edited it on the IPEX, you just give it a .tt name, and then when you do right-click, you will see a process or edit template function. We want to do the process here, which then just gives you a spreadsheet, like you see it here, 2 columns, names and paths of all our projects. So very simple, but could already be useful to you. So we want to upgrade this a little because it doesn't look very nice, and also doesn't contain that much information yet. So the next thing, the first thing we do is we define a header format, so that we have the name and path in the header line. In this case, I went for bold orange and the color white, and orange the background. And otherwise, it's pretty much the same. I just specify in my add line which format should be used for this entire line. If I have a format that's the first parameter, it's applied to the rest of all parameters, but I could also have individual ones, as we will see later. The rest of the script is exactly the same. When you see the output here, I now have nicely column headers defined. Something annoying here is that you see that the columns we would have to reformat them every time because they're too small. So we will address that next. There is a column width function that we just give it a rough estimate of how wide you want to have them, and I went for 30 and 40. I think the default is 12 pixels or so, 12 in some arbitrary Excel unit. And then I get something like that, which is already kind of presentable. If that would contain usable information, you could send it on to your superior in that form without having to create those spreadsheets on your own all the time. So to add some more data, and I'm sticking to just the project. So this is an example that you can actually run yourself. If you want to try it out, I will put up all these files on our blog, so you can download them and try them out there. So I kept it simple and as general as possible. But however, we have seen the use of data points today, so you could do much more complicated examples. But I just went for an application where I want to have the number of patients, studies, series, and images for all my projects in a nice list. So what we do here is we just extend our header line. We still have name and path, but now we also have patient, study, series, and images. And here we request, in these two lines, patients and studies, we request the patients and studies from our database. And we have a very nice object relational database mapper as our database. So everything you request from the database is an object again. Like I can request a list of patients, which contains individual patient objects, and these patient objects then have properties like patient name and things like that. Currently, we are just interested in the count, though. You see here I'm adding a new line where then we have an object that's the list of patients, and I just ask for the count property, similar for the studies and the series, as well as the images. And here we go. So this is from one of our demo systems. So it actually goes a couple of hundred projects further, but this is kind of the output we get. So if we have a root project where we have 3 patients, 3 studies, 3 series, and 3 images. Yeah. If you're dealing with very large tables, then it's annoying that if you scroll down, your headline disappears, or if you scroll too far to the right, then you lose the project name. You know this, the solution to this, we just freeze the panes. It's a standard Excel feature, so that the headline and the leftmost column just stick. We also make it easier to work with these by enabling the auto filters. We will see this. Then you get the small icon in the header line where you can then sort and filter. We can do things like setting the color tab to orange because it then looks so much nicer, and zoom out a bit so we can see a little more for our extended examples. And then you get something like this. You see I scrolled down a little bit. The header line stays up there. And I could also scroll a little bit to the right, and my anchor column A stays that way. So if you're dealing with large tables, you can do all kinds of these features that you know from Excel. You can enable them in the reporting engine. And yeah, these small little widgets here. Then if I click on them, I get a dialog where I can then start sorting. So in this case, let's look for descending order so we see which project has the most images. And then somebody working with the Excel spreadsheet can get those numbers very quickly. And that just makes it easier to work with the data and extract whatever somebody wants. Then as another more advanced feature where you then have to go a little bit more into the database, that might be harder for end users to do, but it's something that the database provides, and if you know how to do it, it's actually not that hard. Is selecting all the modalities in a project, as well as when was the last image uploaded, as well as who was it. And I don't know, because of that glare, if you can see this here, but basically I take the series object because the modality is a property in the DICOM hierarchy, is property of the series, and then search for all elements, and that's in the series we have. I group them by modality, and then ask for the modality column and later join them together in a comma-separated list. Similarly, to find the last image, I go through the list of images that we have per project, search for them. I take all of them and order them by their timestamp in descending order, and then take the first one. So the first on the back was the last one that was uploaded. And once I have that last image, object, I use its creator property to find out who was the person that has uploaded it, as well as the timestamp. And if you put your timestamps in ISO 8601 format into Excel, then it understands them and you can format them in a nice way. So I just went for year, month, date formats that I defined in a format variable. And here we go. So then we see that we have a couple of projects with CT, MR, PET data. The last uploader to our root project was demo account 48 in 2014. So then you put some more meat to that spreadsheet. One other feature that's very powerful in Excel is conditional formatting. That you can then say if a cell has a certain value or compared to another cell is bigger, larger, or whatever, then it should have a certain style. And also this can be put into the reporting engine. In this case, and I know you can't really see this in the back, I defined three formats, one with a background color of yellow, one with lime, and one with a gray color. And then I'm just defining the G column. So you see here from G2 to G, and that's the maximum row I have. Everything with a text containing CT should be in yellow. So I'm marking all projects that have CT data, and it's just as one random example. Another example is to compare two cells. So in the F column, I have the number of images, and I'm comparing this with the C column, the number of patients, and I'm looking for all the projects where the number of images are more than 100 times the number of patients. So these are projects I have a lot of slices in. Just to give you an example of also how you can compare values in columns. And those should then show up in lime with the lime background. And finally, to mark off data that's old, I just compare it to a today value and subtract 3 years. So everything that's older than 3 years is shown in gray, and the other projects are shown in black. Just to give you examples of what you could do with this formatting, which is really powerful. And these numbers also update, things like the today value update on whenever you open the Excel spreadsheet. So it's not like hard-coded coloring, but if you would open that 3 years from now, then everything would show up as gray. And then we get a spreadsheet like this, and you see the CT projects have been marked, and the projects where we have a lot of slices in them, as well as the 2013 uploads are in gray, and the 2014 here is in black. Something that's then missing is we should, of course, also be able to put in formulas, which is very easy to do. I just define a number format with 1,000 separator and define them that they should show up in bold. And then I can use the regular Excel function subtotal. And for some reason, if you do a subtotal with a parameter of 3, you get a count. And if you do it with a 9, you get a sum. That's not our invention. It was Microsoft's. But you can just use whatever equations you want to have in Excel. Just put them in and add them to your spreadsheet with the formula statement. And then at the bottom of the spreadsheet, we see that we have 161 projects on there, 1,690 patients total, and things like that. So you see that also the equation shows up as we have put it in. So basically, almost everything you can do in Excel, you could generate straight from the reporting engine. Yeah, another feature that makes reports even more powerful is that you can also customize them. So you could write a very powerful reporting template, and then allow you to enable certain modules of it or parameterize them that they output something specific. Like you could look for all projects that have a specific modality and then have a report for them. And in this case, I just chose that we limit our reports to not to all the projects we have, but we select a project and then just report on its subprojects. And what you do for this is you just add a form variable to the top, which then the IPEX detects. And if you then open that project, that form will be loaded. In this case, I went for a standard one to select projects. And here we then have a list of all the projects. I can start typing parts of it. This filters it down to all the projects that match. In this case, I was looking for demo account 36. And I made a small change to our code. Instead of going for model project list to get all projects, I went for model project. And then in this case, for whatever reason, it's called plan ID, and we can change it for backwards compatibility. The project form gives me a parameter with the plan ID of whatever I've selected here. So in this case, I get whatever demo account 38 or 36 had, and then I'm asking for all the subprojects. And if I run that report with that template, I get just the 4 subprojects of project 36. So this could be very useful for you to then have one big reporting template and then say, I want to have these expensive functions only some of the time, and they will be written to their own worksheets. But if I want to run it quickly, then I can also leave them out. Or as here, I'm limiting it to specific projects, or it could be give me everything about a specific user, or combinations thereof. We use that a lot to have really monster reports, which you can then drill down to what you're actually interested in. Other things you can do is insert images, for instance, put a logo in, or have charts. That's a feature that's already working, but we're still working on documentation and making it more user-friendly, but it basically works the same way that you would do in Excel. You can have multiple tabs. It's very easy to split things up. You can have links and URLs in there. It's particularly useful when working with the IPEX, because then each project could be a link to that project page on the IPEX, things like that. And you can access files on the web disk and, for instance, read CSV files and put those numbers into a spreadsheet also. All of that is built in. The other example I wanted to look into is creating PowerPoints with the reporting engine. And it starts pretty much the same. You define a mode. In this case, we go for PPTX. And I, again, use a shortcut. Instead of having to write PPTX all the time, I just assign that module to the P variable. And then in PowerPoint, or the PowerPoint module provides functions like add slide. And then I select a layout, in this case the first one, and a title and a subtitle. And then we go for the print all again. And I would get something like this, where I have one slide in the PowerPoint with my title and subtitle set. And you know about these, you can see that well. But this is the master slide view of this PowerPoint, and you see here the different layouts. And in my code, I've selected layout 0, but you can have multiple layouts in your master slides, and you can just they're just numbered this way. So you can just select when you add a slide. You can say it should be a title page, or it should be one of my regular content pages. You just have to know the number within this master slide. And then on the master slides, you define placeholders typically in PowerPoint. And the first one is always used for our title, the second one for the subtitle. In this case, there are 3 more for the page number and things like that that we're actually not touching. Really powerful does the whole thing get if you're not starting with this random templates that's kind of built in here. But if you start with an existing PowerPoint file from your company with the MIT, Merck, or inviCRO logo on it, in this case, I'm going for our inviCRO white templates. And if I run the same code, just this time I've specified which template to start from. I get this is how our master slides looks like. So we have a logo up there, and basically what you see here, we have our address, our contact information, and we also have a title and subtitle, and this is the output I then get out of that system. And that's really useful, in particular if you have written one report that nicely works, you can very easily swap that out and put somebody else's master slides in, and then it looks in whatever style that they have defined. So all the styling is actually done in PowerPoint itself. You should define which colors, which background, and all these things in PowerPoint, and then you just upload an empty template file into the IPEX, and you can start using it, and it will get filled. So in this case, we should start adding a couple of images, because that's one of the strengths of PowerPoint, to present those, as opposed, for instance, to Excel, where it would where we could add an image, but it wouldn't work pretty well for presenting images. You could either always use the full web disk path when adding images, or if everything is stored under some combined folder, you can use the CWD for current working directory parameter or trait of the PowerPoint class to kind of go in there, and then you can specify all paths relative to that. And then we're adding a new picture with the add picture function. It always adds pictures to the last slides you have added, otherwise, if you haven't told it otherwise. So you just start with a add slide, and then you do a add picture, and will be put on that slide. You do the file name. In this case, we can get away with the relative path, which just shortens the whole thing. And then we define the left and top position in inches, or you can also switch it over to centimeters if you prefer. We are flexible on that front. And width, and then the output is something like this, depending on your input image, of course. And this whole thing, yeah, of course, because we have a full script language at our disposal, we cannot only add a single image to one slide, we can also loop over file names. In this case, I had a study that had 3 time points at 1, 4, and 24 hours after injection. And so I'm doing a for loop. I define a variable L for the left starts and W for the width of the images I want. Then I loop through H01, 4, and 24, which are all parts of the file name. And so this, in this case, execute add pictures 3 times. And H is then one of these 3 values along the way, which is used in the file name. The left position is now not fixed, but I use this variable L. And yeah, the top and width are still defined the same way. And after each image added, I just move on by width plus a small gap of this 0.25 inches. And then I end up with this, with 3 different images added at these locations. So in this case, the study also had images with or without RIs, so I can just add another loop around it, where I have the ROI variable, which either has the value ROI or no ROI. And it's pretty much the same. Now I just also have to change the top variable after filling one row. The top should jump to the next row, which I then fill up again. So very straightforward, and you end up with PowerPoints like that. And if you have a large folder of images and you have to all put them onto a PowerPoint, then you will really like this, because this can be really a pain to move images that might all be the same size, and you always have to put them into the same grid. That can be a really cumbersome task to do it manually. But just upload your images on the IPEX, or maybe they already live on the IPEX, and you can automate this process very easily with a few lines of code, and will be much faster than doing it manually. In particular, if you have to do this more often. You can, of course, also add some text to the slides. So we have the same loop here. Sorry, I just added a p add text, and as the text, I'm using the file name, which I have defined in a variable up there. The left, the left variable is the same as for the image. For the top, I just put a small offset in so that it's shown slightly above the image. You could also do t plus height plus a small image to put it below, or whatever you want. And then we also have our file names in there with just 4 lines more of code, or actually 1 line, if you break it down correctly. Besides images and text, you can also do tables. Like this is a simple example where you define, I have 2 columns, 9 rows, should be on 0.75 inch on the left, top 1.5, things like that depend on your template, so you have to work around, but very often it's the center is where you can put your content. And depending on how your master slides defined, how templates look, exactly that way they will show up on the PowerPoint, which also makes it very easy. And that's this is a full example of that study of how we reported on it. So it just went through the web disk, picked up all the files, shows the RI, non-RI version, fills out some information from the DICOM header, and can fill out table information from a CSV file, all stored on the IPEX. And you see here, it makes most sense if you do that for a lot of images. And then it can be, things that would have taken you hours could come down to minutes after you have that template developed, and then can just run it whenever you want. Just don't tell your supervisor that you automated the whole process, and you have a nice break. Great. So, yes.
Can I ask real quick?
Yes.
So I've not done this before, but it's super useful. So if you're not familiar with some of the fields associated with these different functionalities, so for example, when you're the lines for placing the images, and I'm assuming that in addition to the positional options, there's maybe something that's scale the image down by some size, resizing. So where do you learn about the different?
From our manual.
It's in the manual.
Yeah. And if not, then we have to extend it. So if you find things that are that are not described sufficiently, then you should look into this. I also recommend our blog at inviCRO.com. I will fire it up in a browser in a second, where we then post use cases, and that's where I also want to publish all these example files, because that's a good starting point to get you ideas. With the reporting engine so powerful, but also having a full programming language at your disposal, it can be a bit intimidating, and you might not know where to start. So it's great, like for instance, also Gabe's starter script, I think would be something that would be great to share, because that just gets you going, and you have these 6 important objects like the main window, the data manager, everything already defined. That's much easier to start than from an empty file, kind of. So things that we have done that you could also do and that are possible is, you could scan a folder. There's a web disk. There's a web disk module that you can say, give me all the PNG files in a web disk folder, and then you could dump them into a PowerPoint, like in a grid, like we have seen. And after the 6th one, you just start a new slide and add the next ones. It's just one more loop in our example, or each of them could be on their own slide. things like that. There's a web disk function to read CSV files that are on there, and then you can dump that information into Excel or PowerPoint or PDF, or into another CSV file. Combining multiple CSV files into an aggregate file is possible. And we even have one example where we created a Vivo script that wrote an IPEX template, an IPEX reporting template for us, uploaded it to the IPEX, executed the report, and downloaded the results back to your local computer. So you could everything with one button press on the IPEX. In this case, it was QC images that were generated. We uploaded the QC images to the IPEX, depending on what their patient names were. A reporting template was created, uploaded to the IPEX, executed, and then you could download the PowerPoint with one button press. And that's a very nice integrated solution. And something that we also use quite often is you can define cron jobs, which are, if you're working with Linux, you might know about them. You can just define times at which this job should be run. Like, for instance, in the example below, every Sunday at 6 p.m. We are sending out a lab report, and you can put in form parameters. In this case, I mocked this up, but we could use that plan ID to run it on a specific plan and then send it to whoever you want, and then have these reporting templates be executed, on a schedule, like weekly, monthly, daily, however you want it to be. Great. Any more questions? And otherwise, if you have any questions, always contact TJ. Yeah.
Do you generate those in Vivo?
Yeah. Exactly. So animated GIFs are, of course, supported in PowerPoint. We're still trying to get movies working there. That's not trivial. That's currently not supported, but the animated GIFs work here. Or we have PDF reports where we can do the same. There, we're using that PDF is in very interesting file formats. We actually embed a small JavaScript. So PDF is very, very close to HTML and browsers, which also makes it dangerous from a security standpoint, because you can do a lot of things. But basically, we just store the series of still images in there, and then have a JavaScript that changes them, every 0.2 seconds. So that's how we get animated GIFs into PDFs. And there is a special function for that to make that easier, where you can just, I don't know what it's called, web disk animate something, and then it does all of the magic behind it for you. I haven't looked into the PDF output, because that's something that we already offer for, I don't know, 6 years or so. But also the PDF module is very powerful and allows you to create print-ready reports if you're into this. The big advantage of PowerPoint just is that the reporting template might get you 80% where you want to get, just dump in all the images, but then you still want to do your own introductory slide and maybe add a few things along the way. And that was much harder to do with PDF, because once that was produced, it's kind of fixed. And it's harder unless you have the right Adobe tools to make any manipulations. But with PowerPoint, you can also just leave, dump me all the images in there, or all the patient names or study names or subject names or whatever you want to call it. And then you start working with that and adding to it whatever you need and so on. You can actually also, because our reporting engine just appends to whatever template you upload, you might see that your first slide is actually still in there after you appended yours. That's because you are supposed to upload an empty file, or if you always have the same 3 slides about your company or something in front of it, just upload it that way, and then the reporting engine will create slides 4 to whatever. So you can just add to an existing PowerPoint. Still, anybody?
The only thing I'd add to that too is the kind of combining what Gabe presented. So you can take those GIFs or images in VQ, and there's a put function that you can put directly to the IPEX. That image, you just tell it where the file is locally and where the file needs to go on the IPEX side. And then in your IPEX template, just reference that same location. So then you never really have to get out of the ecosystem.
Yeah, and the same also is true here. Like I showed you, there's CWD for the current working directory function. That's also something that's great to parameterize in a template form. So then you can just run this on an arbitrary project. You have the project selector, then you ask for its webdisk path, put that into the CWD, and then the reporting template will run on whatever it is, as long as it's structured in the same way. You know, the files have the same name, or you're dealing with them having different names. So all of this is really made for high throughput and trying to automate things as much as possible. Great.
Thanks, Christoph.